YouTube yayınını açtım burada Rüveyda. Linki
Ha.
de paylaştım Twitter'dan ama arkadaşlarınla paylaşmak istersen bilmiyorum. Hani ya da buraya chat box'a da yazabilirim sana, bir dakika.
Tamam, bakayım. Bu bana herhalde dün gönderdiğinizle aynı link olsa gerek.
Dün kanalın linkini göndermiştim. Şimdi direkt doğrudan videonun linkini de gönderdim.
Tamam. O zaman ben bunları hemen paylaşayım.
Bir dakika içinde başlıyor oluruz.
Tamam. Tamam hocam.
Daha önceden izlemiş miydim bilmiyorum ama chatbox'a sunum sırasında bakabilirsen bakabilirsin. Eğer çok acil bir soru varsa mesela tam böyle bir grafikle ilgili, bir şekille ilgili vesaire, onu o anda da cevaplayabilirsin ama onun dışında genelde soruları 45
Tamam.
dakikanın sonunda alıyoruz, sunumun sonunda. YouTube'dan da soru sorun olursa ben sana onları okurum.
Tamam.
Tamam mı
Tamam.
sunumun sonunda?
Zaten geldiğinde chatte görürüm oradan
Evet,
yapabilirim.
aynen.
Her şey olursa.
E, Tamam, şu anda başlayabiliriz. Ben Türkçe introduce edeceğim ama seni. Sonra sen istediğin dilde yapabilirsin sunumu.
Tamam.
Property Rights and Innovation Dynamism, Historical Evidence from Female Patents in the US başlıklı sunumuyla University of Illinois at Chicago'da doktora öğrencisi olan 4. sınıfta Rüveyda Nur Gözen'i dinleyeceğiz bugün. Kendisine hoş geldin diyelim ve sözü kendisine bırakalım.
Evet, hoş bulduk. Çok teşekkürler hocam. Ben Rüveyda Gözen. Öncelikle böyle bir platformda bana sunma şansı verdiğiniz için ve böyle bir platformu böyle bir zamanda kurduğunuz için çok teşekkür ederim herkese. Ve aynı zamanda katılım gösteren, zamanla ayırıp katılım gösteren herkese de çok teşekkür ederim. Sunuma geçmeden önce hemen kendimi küçük bir tanıtayım. Ben 2014 yılında ODTÜ Ekonomi'den mezun oldum. Daha sonra Koç Üniversitesi'nde ekonomi master'ı yaptım ve daha sonrasında da buraya University of Illinois Chicago'ya da doktoraya geldim. Şimdi size ve çalışma alanlarım daha çok kalkınma ekonomisi ve politik iktisat üzerine ve bugün size sunacağım makale benim doktora tezimin bir parçası olacak küçük bir makale. Ve hala üzerinde çalışıyorum. O yüzden her türlü yorumunuz, tavsiyeniz benim için kesinlikle faydalı olacaktır. Ve aynı zamanda benim hem kendi üniversitemden hem de başka üniversitelerden Amerika'da arkadaşlarımız katılabileceğinden dolayı sunumu İngilizce yapacağım. Ama arzu ederseniz, isterseniz bu soru cevap bölümünde Türkçe'ye de dönebiliriz. All right, so basically, so the title of my study is the property. I basically studied a relationship between the property rights and innovation dynamism, and I try to provide some historical evidence by using female patent data in the United States in the 19th century. So, and this is a work in progress, so if you have any suggestions or comments, they're all welcome. Okay. So there is an enormous literature about the impact of institutions and property rights on the economic growth and development. And just as I noted here, here are some like the canonical papers. So we do observe that providing better institutions or well-defined institutions do promote economic growth in the long run and development. And even if you look at the production side, both at the intensive and the extensive margin, we observe that the productivity and production can go up. Even at the labor market side, we observe that better institutions or better defined, well-defined property rights promote labor supply. And so just like this literature, my big picture question is, what are the effects of property rights on the economic development? But as you all probably notice, there is a huge causal interpretation challenge here because there's obviously a very huge endogeneity problem. So by using a plausibly exogenous policy variation in the 19th century in the United States, I aim to overcome the endogeneity issue as much as possible. Okay. So here is my basically narrow question, the question that I'm going to answer. It's basically is, what is the causal effect of giving property rights to women on patents in the 19th century in the United States? And so maybe some of you might think that working on a project which happened in the 19th century, like you can say like, why should we care about this? It happened like 100 years ago. So basically, so we know that when we look at the developing economies, we do observe that there are still problems with institutions, or there are like ill-defined property rights, or there are bad institutions, worse quality institutions. And we know that these have negative consequences on the welfare of the households and the economy. So just by using the 19th century like as a laboratory, if I can show you today that providing equal rights to people, like equal economic rights to people, promote innovations in the long run, then that would have a really nice policy implication even for today. Okay. So let me talk you through the variation that I'm going to use, and then I will talk about and I will show you some maps. So basically, we're going to be looking at the 19th century in the United States. And basically, in the first half of the 19th century, women have no economic rights. Okay, so but after in the second half of the 19th century, each state start giving property rights to women. So what are those rights? So one is that the women, like women, are now allowed to control property, write contracts, and engage in business on their own account, and keep their earnings from their labor. Okay? So basically, they're given an independent economic stance, and they are now an economically independent agent in the economy. And by using the state and time variation, I will do my analysis. Okay, so what are the contributions of this paper? Is that it's the first paper analyzing the causal impact of these economic rights rigorously by using a novel historical data set. And I basically also apply some different econometric methods to extract that causal effect. And I tried, and basically, when we look at the non-unitary household models, where household bargaining is the main concept, I expand, we, for example, in these models, we observe that when you give independence to women, economic independence, we do observe that both mothers and children have higher education and health outcomes. And basically with this paper, through looking at innovations, I basically extend these models to a long run outlook. So basically I use innovations and I contribute to these models as well through looking at a long run result, which is the innovations. Okay. So you might think that, like, do we really observe that there are successful patents by women? So here is let's go back to archives. And then this is a patent of a tool which we actually use a lot in our daily lives. And you might guess, but that's a dishwasher patent. And it is patented and invented by Josephine Cochrane from Illinois in the second half of the 19th century. And the beauty of this patent is that the beauty of her invention is that she establishes a corporation. So she creates a really nice income stream for herself and for her family. And at the same time, her corporation becomes a part of like a very well-known corporation today, which is the Whirlpool Corporation. And she basically created like a really good outcome for both the economy and for herself and for her family. So we do observe that there are such really nice, really positive and successful stories during that time. And in addition to this, to this picture, like to this, to these archives, I also, you might also wonder, like these rules. So let me state that. So these rules, these rights, are game changers. Okay, so in the first half of the 19th century, women have no rights, but in the second half of the 19th century, they're basically given these full independent economic rights. So that's a game changer. So, and it's possible because there is a norm in the society, and it's possible that maybe some of them are going to be reluctant to accept these codes, or it's possible that maybe some of them are going to hear about these changes like much later on. So, because of that, I went to New York Times archives, and it's actually very small. You're not going to be able to read it, but I read it for you. You will basically see that in the newspapers, these rights are very loudly mentioned, and more than a few times. So it is, so if you have a concern, like, do people really know about these rights? Are they feeling confused about these rights? Because that's like a norm changing, these are norm changing rights. So basically in the newspapers, we do observe that the public is informed about these rights. But still, like maybe some of them do not get the like may not have full access to newspapers, maybe the ones in the rural areas. So I will show you an event study, and there I will show you that actually we do not observe an effect in the short run, but in the long run. So we observe that there is a positive impact, there is a positive change in innovations by women in the long run, and that could be an indicative of the fact that maybe these rules did create some confusion among people, but then it's possible that over time they get used to it, and then the policies or these rights actually become more and more effective, and then we see an effect. Okay, so now I will, so let me just tell you the roadmap. I will basically talk about the data and the empirical strategy, and then I will present you some of my results and a few robustness checks, and then we will conclude and discuss the future work and the caveats. All right. So that was kind of one of the most challenging parts of this work, because working on a 19th century and on a data in the 19th century actually can be really painful, because this data set, the women's patent data, is actually not well digitized by USPTO. So basically, let me show you when I say not well digitized. So they're basically old PDFs taken from an old book. So even if you use like an OCR program, there are going to be a lot of issues, because the program is going to have hard time to read all these letters and numbers. So you will have to go back and like to your Excel sheet and then fix all the numbers and the letters. So I tried to do that like for a long time, and then I had to hire a company to do it for me, because it was like really time consuming. But at the end, I achieved it, and then I have the data. So basically in this data, as I showed you, we have the information on like the name and the surname, city, state, and a patent year, and a patent information of women. And they are specifically collected for women, like this document. But in my analysis in this paper, it's the analysis is not at the individual level, but it's aggregated to the state level. And the second data set I'm using is just to have some like control variables in my analysis, is obtained from historical census data. And the last one, which is the policy data, I use the Tennyson et al. 2012 paper to have the most up-to-date policy dates. And then I run the analysis with these three data sets. And I will also show a robustness check for the third one, because there are some like other economic historians, and then and they argue that some of the states' policy years might be a little bit different. So they argue that it's different than what's presented. So I do a robustness check with other suggested policy years, and then it seems like that the results hold even if I use other policy years suggested by other economic historians. Okay, so we introduced the data. So let me show you them, like the policy map. So here, basically, the darker colors represent later adoption of the policy. So here, like, we observe a nice variation of the state and time variation of this policy, of these rights. But you might probably notice that there are some like regional correlations. Like, for example, the East and West, like they kind of pass these rights around the same time, and the South a little bit later. So you might be concerned that there might be some regional correlations, and if it's also correlated with the patents and the time of the policy, then it might cause some bias. So, and in my analysis, I will add, to fix that issue, I will add a region by year fixed effect and show that the results still hold, even in the case that there is a region by year fixed effect. Okay. So here is a small descriptive like a graph. So basically, here, if you see like during that time, so there's a really nice increase in the number of patents obtained by women during that time. So even if it's like it's around like 5,000, it seems like there is a huge increase. There's a huge spike in the number of patents obtained by women. And this blue line, the dashed blue line, represent like women can collaborate on patents like with another woman or with a man. So we also observe that the number of collaborated patents increase, but the number is around like 200 and like around 200 or 300. So, but here what matters is this red line. It's just that shows that there is a huge and a really nice increase in the number of patents held by women. Okay. So, so what is the empirical strategy? So basically I'm using a difference in differences model because there is like nice time and state variation. So it's actually pretty suitable for that. So let me introduce you my variables. So the dependent variable is going to be the number of patents, but I will transform them with inverse hyperbolic sign transformation. The reason is that there are like 0 patents for women for some states for some times. So in order to strengthen, and if I take the log of it, the log 0 is going to be undefined. So using another, like this method also suggested in the economics literature, like the inverse hyperbolic transformation, I basically have values for the, like for the values where log 0 is undefined. Okay, so but the interpretation is going to be like exactly the same with logs, and it will introduce semi-elasticity. And here on the right-hand side, that basically the policy variable is a binary outcome, and the coefficient of interest is beta 1. So we will be looking at this coefficient, and here like we have the state fixed effects, just in case that there might be some time invariant state specific unobservables or observables that might be correlated with both the policy and the outcome and cause bias in my estimates. I include state fixed effects. And excuse me, and I also include time fixed effects just because of the same reason. And then I add a few control variables. So one is the literacy rate of women during that time, like in state S at time T. And I include the labor force participation rate of women in state S at time T. And just to introduce some heterogeneity, thinking that maybe the impact of literacy rate or labor force participation rate is going to be amplified or decreased when it's accompanied with like literacy rate or vice versa, I also introduce an interaction term. And then I will discuss further about these control variables in my other tables. So an additional analysis, in addition to this like hyperbolic transformation and the dependent variable, I also apply like in the paper, like a linear probability model. But basically the main specification in the paper is the hyperbolic transformation. And today I will show you the results of the hyperbolic transformed version. Okay. So what are the identification assumptions? We all probably know, like in a difference in differences model, one of the most important assumption is that absent the change in this treatment, in treatment, the outcome of interest would have evolved in a parallel fashion. So, and we have to show, like, and I'm gonna show you an event study that the pre-trends must hold. And the good side of this assumption is that it's testable. So, and with the pre-trends test, we can show whether it's valid or not. And then I will show you an event study on that too. And the second assumption, which is something we all make in almost all the economics papers, is the stable unit treatment value assumption, which means that there are no general equilibrium effects, which means that there are going to be no spillovers and no externalities. So again, these are the assumptions of this paper too. And the third assumption is that there should be no spatial correlation in errors. But I mean, based on the policy map that I showed you, maybe there might be some spatial correlation in errors. So, so in that case, maybe the adding region by year fixed effects can be really helpful in this case. And the last assumption is the no compositional changes in state demographics. And then I will further discuss that assumption at the end. Okay, so, and these are the assumptions. And here we go to the event study. So we basically, this picture is actually the summary of my paper. I mean, I think I can say that. So on the left-hand side, we have the coefficients on hyperbolic patterns. And here, if you look at the left-hand side here, we see the pre-trends. So even if, like, for example, this one seems just a little bit significant here, overall, when you apply an F statistic, these are jointly insignificant. So in that sense, we can say that the pre-trend assumption holds. And I think that the beautiful side is also on the right-hand side, is that in the first 4 years, in the first 5 years, you see that the effect is indistinguishable from zero, right? So it seems like there is not much of an effect in the first 5 years when these rights are given. But after, so let me tell you what that coefficient is, like the 1 on 5. That represents the average impact for like the years, for if it's between like 5 and 10, and the 10, like the coefficient on 10 is like between 10 and 15 years, and 15 is like 15 plus. So here we observe that, like, in the long, I mean, I call this long run. Well, you could also call here like long run, but here that's how I define it. So basically, in the short run, we do not observe an effect. The results are basically indistinguishable from zero. But if you look at to the coefficients after 5 years, it seems like there is a really nice positive increase here. So, and on average, I will show you the table. It seems like there was like a 30% increase in the number of patents obtained by women. Okay. So, and maybe, so there are two things I want to mention for this, like, why do we observe an effect in the long run? So the first reason could be that maybe like inventing can be a long run investment. So it may not be something like, okay, we gave you the rights and then you invent something and apply for a patent and then like deal with it. So it may not be the case. It's possible that it might take some time, and then we will talk about the channels too. So it might take some time and then we can observe an effect. Maybe that's why we observe such a long run trend. This like the long run increase might also be because, if you remember the newspaper that I showed you, the discussion there, so maybe people were really confused about these rights. Like, how are they going to apply? Like, how are they going to do this? Maybe in terms of inheritance or other kinds of things, they might be confused. So that's why, or it's possible that maybe the information diffusion is not that fast as we expect. So maybe that's why we also observe such a long run phenomena in this graph. Okay, so let me show you the tables. So the coefficient of interest is going to be in the, like, it's in the red box. So like all of them include like year and state fixed effects, and I have the like literacy, like these control variables, and it seems like there's like a 35% increase in the number of patents held by a woman. But there is an important issue here. Maybe most of you noticed that it's that these control variables are terribly endogenous. So it's possible that and when they're endogenous, they're going to create dirty variation. And then even like when there is dirty variation, it's really hard to trust even that 35% coefficient. So in order to fix these fix these control variables, I apply two methods. So one is this one. So I take 10-year lags of the literacy rate and a labor force participation. And then instead of using the contemporaneous control variables, I basically use a 10-year lags. And again, like when I do the regression with the 10-year lags, it seems like the coefficient remains almost the same. And in like it's still positive, it's still significant. Here it's 33 and here it's 36. But still, you might think that even putting like a 10-year like interval might still suffer from some endogeneity, because it's possible that like if a state passes a law like at some time, and then you put a lag, and then some other states pass it later, so it seems like there might be still some issues with endogeneity. So that's why I apply I apply a method used also by Duflo 2004 and Bleakley 2011. I basically introduced like a baseline literacy rate, which is here is going to be the 1850 the year, and a baseline labor force participation rate, and I interact them with year dummies. So this is basically so let me explain it in one sentence. It's basically like trying to control kind of forward trend in the literacy and the labor force participation rate, because in the absence of treatment, it's very likely, and it is the case, that the literacy rate is going to go up and the labor force participation in a woman is going to go up. And if that increase is correlated with both the dependent and independent variable that I'm interested in, then it's going to introduce some bias. So that's why like choosing it like the baseline value, and then which is the 1850 here, and interacting with the year dummies is also important, because if I only introduce the baseline value of these control variables, then the state fixed effects are going to annihilate those numbers, those variables. So but the only the issue here is that due to some collinearity issues, I couldn't add both the control variables at the same time, so I had to separate them. So here, for example, in the first column, you observe that I put the baseline literacy times the year dummies, but I cannot put the labor force participation rate. And here in these like two coefficients, you see that the effect is higher, but I don't think, for example, here we can discuss about the bias, because in the other ones, I put both the interaction term and both the control variables, but in this case, I could only put one of them. So maybe that's why the coefficients are increasing. So that's why instead of the magnitude, I'm going to focus on the sign and the significance. So it seems like even if I use these like new methods in my analysis, it seems like the effect is still positive and significant on patents. Okay, and so here is so just as we talked, just as I talked about this in the policy map, it is possible that there might be some regional correlations in terms of passing the law a bit earlier, and then that might also have some effect on the patents because of some of the dynamics in the regions. So that's why I do the analysis with region by year fixed effects. And let me walk you through that table. So let's look at the first column. Excuse me. So let's look at the first column. So here I do not add any controls. It's like totally pure. It's just a region by year fixed effects, and I have the policy variable. And it seems like when I control the region, like the by year fixed effects, the magnitude is like around 32%, and it's still positive and significant. And if you look at column 2 and column 3, you will basically, so here I introduce like the 10-year lagged controls and the contemporaneous controls. It seems like the number, like the coefficient again decreases, but it doesn't lose anything from its like sign and significance. But still, because of the endogeneity of control variables, I also ran the analysis with the baseline controls. So it's the table 5. And here we observe that when I add these baseline literacy and labor force participation rate interacted with year dummies, it seems like, and in the presence of region by year fixed effects, it seems like still the effect is actually really stable, and it's around like 30%. So here, so far, like I showed you that like there is a really nice positive and significant effect on the number of patents held by a woman. And here I'm going to show you a few more, like robustness checks, and then we will discuss the channels, and then I will conclude. So here, I'm not studying law and economics, and I'm not like fully an economic historian. But when you look at the literature, like this property rights literature, it seems like economic historians, they do discuss like the policy dates of these rights. So, and the one I use is the most up-to-date one. And they basically have to go back to archives and you know, identify those like years and then when exactly this was effective, etc. So and just in case, for example, there is another paper like Hahn 1996 and Hoff 1991, like looking at the like using the policy dates of these property rights. So they basically, their policy dates are just a little bit different, for example, for some states. So just in case to see that the results are robust, I basically run all my analysis with their policy dates. And here what I observe is that, for example, the first coefficient is the one I have. So like the Tennyson et al., the policy dates that I use. And the second one is the Hahn 1996. And the third one is Hoff 1991. So it seems like the numbers are actually very stable. It's like they're very close to each other. It's just that the one I use is just shows just a little bit of a lower number. But it seems like even under the like, it seems like the results are robust to economic historians, other like hotly debated policy dates. Okay, and this is the like, so one issue that you might think of is that during that time in the United States, there are states, but there are territories as well. So they're a little bit different than the states. So that's why it might be like some of them. So some of these territories, for example, Dakota territory. Okay. So now, for example, we know that there's a South Dakota and then a North Dakota. But it's possible. And during that time, they were a territory, they were together. But then in the 19th century, they are separated and they become independent sovereign states. So, and to eliminate any concerns that like related to this territory or state formation, I basically like apply, for example, let's assume like the Dakota territory stays, or from the beginning, I just assume that they were separate states. So here is just an example. Even if I apply these state and territory formations, like formation, it seems like the result is still robust. So if you have any concerns related to like this territory versus state situation, it seems like the results do not change at all. Okay, so so far it seems like the results are robust to several specifications, and like to other policy dates, I add region by year fixed effects and other kinds of like playing with the control variables. It seems like the effect stays. It is positive and significant around like 30% or 35%. But one thing you might think is that, okay, Rüveyda, like we see that there is a positive and a significant. Okay, we get it. But but why does it happen? Like, why is it the case? So, and I will tell you that is the most difficult part to identify. And let me explain the first part first, and then I will talk about the ones at the bullet points. So during that time, so since women do not have any rights, if husbands, for example, so we say that since you are not an independent economic actor, there are actually no private returns on obtaining a patent, because normally patents, like, they promote motivation, and because it puts you ahead of other people in the market, and then you can expand your production, etc. So patents in that sense can be both helpful and it might be also destructive, but here let's just assume that it's positive. But here in this case, in this woman's case, it seems like the private returns are not that big. But we will discuss that. So but it's possible, for example, that instead of the wives, instead of women, maybe their husbands go and apply for their ideas. Okay, so maybe like getting just a patent will still benefit to the household, even if the private. So again, I mean, for example, maybe we can say that the private returns are still like there are still some private returns in the absence of these rights. But based on if there is such an argument, I think the best answer could be that based on the non-unitary household models, what we see is that when you give independent economic rights to women, or like to other groups as well, but like and in general it's studied on women. So when you give these rights to women, we do observe that based on the household bargaining incentive, so we do observe that the mothers and their children's education and health get better. Okay, so if that wasn't the case, if it didn't create any private returns, like providing these rights, then we wouldn't observe these results. So, and in my case too, well, still if they're pooling their income, if they're like using a patent for the household, that's fine. But still, when you give independent economic rights to women, we should observe based on these models that the private returns should increase as a result of that bargaining power change. But still, that doesn't like quite explain the channel. I think it's just still a little bit vague. So one thing basically based on, so it's possible that maybe it's because that these rights promote the labor force participation of women, and then they go in like, you know, notice an inefficiency in the market, and then just they invent their own machine, and then they apply for a patent, and then here you go, and then you start a business, and then you go ahead. Or it's possible that maybe not the labor force participation, but it's possible that they accumulate more and more assets like cash holdings, etc. So maybe that wealth over time promotes this process. Or it's possible that there might be some human capital accumulation over time as women get more educated. It's maybe more likely to see more innovations by them. And these papers, they're looking at the property rights, but not on innovations. But they basically, the argument, so there is actually no agreement in the literature because it's extremely hard to extract the channels. Basically, there is lack of data, and there are other kinds of things that I will mention in a minute. So one thing that that like one of the future works that I have to, and I think I should do, is to identify the channel. So far, to me, it seems like it could be more the human capital accumulation, because I see a positive impact on literacy rate too. Well, that's again, like just a correlation, not causality. And based on the literature, it seems like there is more effect, like there is a more change in the education of women. So to me, it seems like, but that could be speculation. So it's just not like, I'm not talking, like I'm not providing you in the regression models and that, but it seems like it might be the education channel, but that's the channels are like, I have to dig deeper the channels to see why we see this consequence, why we see such an increase in the long run. Okay, so I think I have 6 minutes, so I think that will be enough. So basically, as I repeated, so it seems like given equal rights in the literature, it seems like it has a positively effect on education and health outcomes on women and their children. But this paper, basically the paper my paper, I basically additionally show that establishing equality, giving equal economic rights to women basically boosts the number of patents obtained by women by 35% on average. And the result is robust to like different kinds of specifications. When I add the control variables, like I play with them, and it seems like the effect, like the magnitude might change a little bit, but it seems like the positive and the significant effect stays the same. Okay, so future work. So this is like, this was a study at the state level. Okay, so should I answer that question now? Okay, maybe at the end I'll check that. So this was a study at the state level. So what I will do is that that is a more kind of a long run goal, is to get the individual level data, because I basically have the patent data at the individual level, and I can merge, and I will try to use the census data at the individual and try to merge them. But that's like the kind of the future work. For now, I wanted to see if there is any effect at the state level, like whether it's worth to pursue that question. So it seems like there is some positive and significant effect at the state level. And so in my future work, I will try to work on the individual level data. And since I couldn't, like in this state level analysis, since I am not able to like extract the channels, I didn't prefer to write a theoretical model, because I mean, speculating in that sense, like assuming several things and then just saying that this is probably the channel, and then writing a theoretical model didn't seem to me very, I mean, nice. So that's why when I use the individual level data, if I can also show that there are like, if I can find some hints of the channels, then I will also write down a theoretical model based on what I see in the data. And so the fourth one, so during that time in the 19th century, it's possible that there might be some, for example, prejudice against women. So even if you give rights to them, it's possible that like when you go to the USPTO office, it's possible that like the men may like or women, like whoever works in that office, so they might be biased against women. So maybe it's possible that because of that prejudice, they may not give a patent, okay, or or they may kind of cause some difficulty to them, and then they might be deterred from that process. So, and in that case, then I would underestimate the number of patents that I see. But still, I think using the trend in patents owned by males could be a really nice solution, because it is also possible that if, for example, in a household, if a husband, like, you know, the woman comes up with an idea, but like it's possible that, you know, they are like, they think that there might be prejudice, or like, you know, it's hard to get a patent for that woman. So maybe the husband can go and apply for a patent. So that's why, like, and before these rights and after these rights, I think looking at the trend in patents owned by males can fix these issues, because this, for example, can cause bias. So the next step, like in my future work, I am planning to convert the like, again, probably apply the same method as I applied to women's data. It's that I have to extract the male patents and then and include that into my analysis to at least alleviate those concerns. And the last one that I would like to discuss is, so the 19th century is actually a very volatile era. So it's like, especially in the second half of the 19th century in the United States, just that there might be some compositional changes, which we assumed at the beginning. So it's possible that, for example, there was migration from Europe, or there was an internal migration within the US. So it's possible that there might have been some compositional changes, which again might bias my results. So, and in my future work, if I can try to do something like to see, like to alleviate these concerns. I mean, I'll try to do as much as I can to alleviate these concerns. So yeah, and if you have any suggestions about these, and I mean, it would be really great. So thank you very much. I think I'm on time. So, and if you have any suggestions or questions, I can answer them now. So let me look at the chat. Okay. Did you consider including distance to railroads? Yeah, I think, I see. Yeah, I can definitely, oh, Hornback paper, okay. I will definitely look at that paper. I think railroads can also be like a, it can be, yeah, I'll definitely look at it. I never thought of including that as a control variable. Yeah, that's it. I will try to. yeah, and also, yeah, and railroads can also help, I think, in terms of maybe migration. Like, you know, if there are compositional changes, can I see them with it? So maybe, yeah. Okay. And a second question, let me look at it. Does the policy change refer to? Okay. So for the first question, so yeah, they're general economic rights. So basically, or maybe I didn't like clarify this well. So the policy change is that, so normally in 1790, there is a really nice, like one of the most egalitarian rights in the United States, and that says that like everyone in the society is allowed to apply for a patent. So even if like before these rights are given, it seems like women can apply for a patent, but like, you know, they do not have any property rights. Like, how are they going to do it? But so normally, like these policies, like this policy change, basically refer to these general economic rights. And could there be state level factors that affect the policy change? Yeah. So for how many women in total we're talking about? So I don't remember per year, but like when I look at until 18, maybe I should keep that in mind. Like I should look at it by year. But at the end, I'm looking at until like 1900. It seems like there are like 5,000 number of patents, and yeah. So yeah, the third one. So if there are time invariant, unobservable, and observable factors that might affect the policy adoption. Yeah, exactly. If these are time invariant, then my state fixed effect should control and then should be able to eliminate those. But if there isn't like something like a time, like changing by time, and at the same time correlated with these both things, just then it might cause bias. But for now, at the state level factors, which we think are kind of like time invariant, then the state fixed effects should solve that issue. Okay, thank you Harun. Çok teşekkür ederim. Başka sorularınız varsa alabilirim. Thank you again for listening. If you have any other comments or questions or suggestions, I would be really happy to listen too.
Evet, sorusu olan arkadaş varsa, if anyone else has any questions.
YouTube'da da olabilir eğer yani şey varsa. Var mı bilmiyorum ama.
Let me also look at YouTube whether there are any questions. Okay. There is a question, but it says it's answered already.
Okay.
Let's wait one more. Oh, okay. There is another question from Aykut.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really nice question. So it is. I know that reminded me a few papers like talking about a superstar inventors. But so it's possible that like maybe some women, I should look at the data again. But it's possible that maybe some of them, like maybe there are some observations with one patent, but like some of them maybe are applying for 5 or 6 patents. That's possible. But in terms of if you're asking in terms of like achievement or success, for example, the example that I gave, like Josephine Cochrane, for example, it seems like that's one of the most influential and the most successful one. So it is possible that maybe she also applied for other kinds of patents when she improved improved the machine. So, but I can also check that, yeah. And just like, and as a descriptive statistics, I can present that. Okay.
There is a question from YouTube, Rüveyda. Let me read it. Could you show us patent distribution by state level yearly instead of hyperbolic distribution negative binomial?
I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't have it right now, but yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Is it? I think it's because maybe the person who asked this like thinks it might be like much more clear with this with such a graph. Yeah, I can do that definitely. If it's gonna be more of a yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only question from YouTube.
Okay, sounds very good. Thank you very much again for...
Teşekkürler Rüveyda.
Ben de teşekkür ederim hocam. Çok sağ olun.
Teşekkürler. Ağzınıza sağlık.
Teşekkür ederim. İyi ki vaktinizi ayırdınız. Çok sağ olun.
Tamam, sana başarılı bir eğitim hayatı diliyoruz doktorada. Görüşmek üzere ve bugünkü Türkiye Uzaktan İktisat seminerlerini sonlandırıyoruz. Pazartesi günü Boğaziçi Üniversitesi'nden İngiliz kaçamakla devam edeceğiz. 18 Mayıs.
Tamam.
Pazartesi günü. Görüşmek dileğiyle. Güle güle herkese.
Çok teşekkürler.